morning. Good morning. If I could have everybody have their seats. I know we're going to have a full house today, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for being here. We have a jam-packed full agenda. So I want to make sure that we have great content and great speakers for you today. So I can't wait for you to hear what they all have to say. My name is Terri, and I'm President and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber, and we are excited to bring this to you as part of our public policy series. But these series would not be possible if it wasn't for our sponsors. We have Air Products and Chemicals, Salt River Project, Planet Startup, Dignity Health Chandler Regional Medical Center, Intel, Catalyst Computer Technologies, Southwest Gas, Edward Jones, Terri McKibbin, APS, and Dragon Walk Fine Chinese Restaurant. Let's give our sponsors a big round of applause. I also would be remiss if I didn't welcome those people that are attending online. We have a number of people that are still watching online, so thank you for joining us. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I'd like to introduce our 2022 Chair of the Board, Mr. Rick Hughes.
Better known as Terry's assistant. Anyway, I just want to welcome everybody on behalf of the Chamber. Public policy is a really important part of our chamber. I think we lead the chamber, especially in East Valley, in terms of public policy, making sure we have really informative programs for our residents. As you can see today, it's really well attended, and also the people that we have here speaking are so. I think I'm going to get to introduce the first speaker today. It's my pleasure. Let's see here. Sorry. Our first speaker is Audra Koester Thomas, a proud graduate of Texas A&M University. Audra became active in public policy as an intern for a Texas congressman. After serving in Washington, D.C., Audra earned graduate degrees in public administration and political science from the University of Houston. He worked for the Woodlands, Texas on policy and led historic governance projects for founded communities annexation. In 2015, Audra joined Maricopa Association of Governments to facilitate long-range transportation planning efforts, the nation's second largest metropolitan planning organization, 10,659 square miles. Previously, Audra worked for Partners for Strategic Action, a Fountain Hills-based community planning firm. Audra grew up on a family farm in southeastern Minnesota. Her interest in agriculture and natural resource and policy issues, continues to hold an interest in the family's cattle business, GFA. Perfect. Please welcome Audra.
Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting us to be here on behalf of the 32-member agencies that comprise the Maricopa Association of Governments. It's a pleasure to talk about something that's extremely important at this time of rapid pace growth in Maricopa County, and that is, of course, the future of our transportation infrastructure. As noted just in my introduction, the Maricopa Association of Governments is a metropolitan planning organization for central Arizona. It encompasses over 10,000 square miles. Over 50 years old, our job is to be the regional transportation planning agency and to program federal funds that come by way of us as a metropolitan planning organization from the federal government. After the 2010 census, folks here in the Southeast Valley know that our region started to grow into Pinal County. And as such, the governor expanded our boundaries to include northern Pinal County, including the city of Maricopa, the entirety of the Gila River Indian community down to the town of Florence and up through Apache Junction, over 10,000 square miles. Second largest metropolitan planning organization in the country, with a very diverse landscape of land use patterns and interests. For those of us in transportation, it makes our job quite challenging, but also quite fun. Instrumental to the transportation infrastructure we have here in this region is a dedicated half-cent sales tax first established by voters back in 1985. When this region started to really open up with growth in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have a lot of high capacity transportation infrastructure. been here for that long, you've seen this network open literally before your eyes. You may have attended a Freeway opening party. We celebrate those milestones because our infrastructure really is new, and because of you to deliver it. That half-cent sales tax is what delivered this network that you see here, establishing the loop freeway corridors of 101, 202, and 303. It also, after its first 20-year extension, excuse me, first 20 years in existence, was extended for another 20 years. And in that case, included a multimodal package, helping to establish light rail, soon to be opening streetcar in our region. What you don't see on this map are really instrumentally important arterial projects. That contiguous grid network that is unique to this region carries about half of our traffic and goods throughout the region each and every day, and also some support for bus transit service throughout this region. The impacts of the sales tax and the transportation investments this region has made are considerable. You'll see here that the freeway network on average saves you about 105 hours in your commute each year. Most of our jobs are located within a mile or two of a freeway corridor or a high capacity transit corridor. And you know how unlocking economic potential occurs when you invest in transportation. You'll see here the compounding economic benefit and ultimately the valuation increase of properties adjacent to major transportation corridors, bringing wealth and prosperity to our region. We have spent the last 4 or 5 years working with our elected leadership to develop a new long-range plan. It is intended to be funded through an extension of that important half-cent sales tax, and we'll talk about that at the end of the day. And our elected officials have worked with us at MAG over the course of the last 4 years in developing this plan. You'll see here are the 6 goals that our regional council set forth within this long-range transportation plan. Not necessarily anything unique or surprising here, but I do want to draw your attention to the upper right-hand corner in our responsiveness goals. One of the challenges our elected officials like Supervisor Sellers and Mayor Hartke gave us was find a way to develop a long-range plan. In this case, we're looking out to the year 2050. I'll let you do the math in your head on how old you will be in 2050. Develop a plan that invests in major transportation corridors that take back generations of commitment and funding to develop and open, but at the same time be responsive, of course, to the future innovations and technologies that are emerging day over day, year over year. That was a hard challenge for us to find enough firm commitment to projects while also providing enough flexibility in the plan that will grow along with us and our future generations. And I'll talk a little bit later about how we did that. Here's where we started. Our regional council asked us to initiate this process with a call for projects, asking for ideas, concepts, future investments that we needed for transportation in this region. And Mayor Hartke's staff delivered for us, along with all of our other member agencies. Over 1,400 different ideas were submitted as part of this process. This map illustrates the ones we could put on the map. There are others that we cannot, and we're not necessarily geographically specific. But what I want to draw your attention to is this number down here in the lower left-hand corner, and that's $90 billion worth of demonstrated transportation need in this region. Probably doesn't surprise you necessarily, the number might. We're a fast-growing region. You're gaining new neighbors coming from other parts of the country every single day. People want to be here to enjoy our quality of life, and it's something that's extremely important to Supervisor Sellers. So we needed to be able to strike a balance, not only in continuing to drive transportation investments from the region, but also recognizing we don't have that amount of funding. So our elected officials had to make some tough choices. Ultimately, over the course of several months, using considerable technical analysis and detail, our elected officials came down to an investment package that over 25 years worth of revenue, extending that dedicated half-cent sales tax to the year 2050, would ultimately result in a project programs, projects and programs that ultimately can continue to keep prosperity moving in this region. Let's talk a little bit about that investment plan. It's important to note we talk and feature the sales tax a lot, that dedicated half-cent sales tax first established by voters back in 1985. It is projected over a 25-year term to generate just over $19 billion in revenue. What's important, and I want you to walk away knowing today, is we leverage that sales tax against other revenues available to the region, largely federal formula funds that come to us from Washington, D.C., and also our share of the Highway User Revenue Fund, or what you might know as the gas tax. In total, the composition of this program totals over $36 billion. You'll see a map in front of you. This illustrates those major capital projects that we have identified in the plan. This comprises, if you believe it, over 200 projects just on this map. I'll feature a couple of them. Completion of the SR-24 building out of that facility here in the Southeast Valley. Establishing the SR-30 corridor extending from I-17 out to and through the Loop 303, and then extending an interim capacity out to 85 in the Southwest Valley, also known as the I-10 reliever. Considerable amount of investment also on I-10. Complete reconstruction of I-17, one of our major north-south spine corridors throughout the region. Extending light rail capacities further west in the region, expanding streetcar east into this part of the region. We're really excited also about establishing bus rapid transit in the region. I wanted to feature several of the projects here in this area. Specifically with bus rapid transit, we have two corridors identified, connecting here at the mall up Roll Road and to Scottsdale. We also have a corridor extending on Arizona Avenue to connect up into Mesa and the light rail corridor. US 60 multimodal optimization corridor whose footprint is fixed, but we see an opportunity to potentially modernize and further extend the capacity perhaps within that fixed right of way. Dedicated some funding to evaluate it. Looking at, for those of you who might travel up to the Scottsdale Air Park area, helping to fix the bottleneck you experience on the Loop 101 between the 60 and the Red Mountain Freeway. Also a dedicated system traffic interchange DHOV lane connecting the 202 down here to the Price Freeway to help with morning and evening commutes. We have DHOV ramps also at Hamilton and Galveston. I-10 to follow the Broadway curve project. We have collector distributor roads programmed further south of that area between Elliott and Baseline. In addition, several TIs and improvements to traffic interchanges to move folks through those intersections better, including at Chandler and Warner. And then a series of other arterial projects for which I believe the mayor will talk a little bit more about. Here's some facts, and figures about the composition of this investment portfolio. What I want to draw your attention to specifically on this slide is in that salmon color. We have set aside considerable funding for a variety of programs, including active transportation, bicycle and pedestrian improvements to help protect our most vulnerable users of the system, expanded ways to improve our arterial network, continuation of safety programs, or intelligent transportation systems, that technology that you don't necessarily see but helps move you safely and effectively throughout the region. These funding sources will allow us iteratively every few years or so to do a call to project, allow us to find the best and the brightest projects throughout the region. And that's part of the way we'll be able to be flexible into the future, not knowing all the solutions today, but having funding set aside that our mayors can ultimately program into the future when those needs arise. These are more about the programs. You have a sheet in front of you. I think the other thing I would like to highlight about the programs that we've set aside are, these are the things that we've gotten the most public support for. These are the things that provide and contribute to quality of life, We get considerable public support for these kinds of investments that make our communities thrive and are the things that voters very much care about. You can learn more at ourmomentumplan.com. We've pivoted our website from a public engagement tool to a public information tool. It includes a dynamic map where you can zoom in and out of your location, see more about those projects that may be located near you. We're now in the phase of this process where we need to seek legislative approval. Unique to Maricopa County, we can't come right back out to you for a question to extend that dedicated half-cent sales tax. We first need to seek that authority through the Arizona legislature. We have companion bills, Senate Bill 1356 by Mr. Pace, who's been a fantastic champion and sponsor for us in the Senate. Mr. Carroll from Sun City with a concurrent bill in the House. We are thrilled with the success we've been able to get these bills through. Ultimately in the Senate, we are through the Senate. We've gotten through House committee and are awaiting House floor action as well. Very excited about the progress, but it'll take some effort to get it over the finish line to allow voters ultimately this November to make a decision on extending this important tax. As I conclude today, I'd be remiss in not acknowledging the fantastic leadership we have in this region, unique in my opinion. It's a privilege for me to do my job with the leadership that we have in this region. Two of those esteemed leaders are here today. Mayor Hartke, who serves currently as our Transportation Policy Committee Chair. You'll see both he and Supervisor Sellers pictured here. Transportation Policy Committee is our public-private partnership at MAV. 6 appointed members by the legislature to serve alongside our mayors to develop this plan. And what's so important about this is that it ensures that we have a broad spectrum of support. You'll see here last summer, this photo was taken at the conclusion of an extremely important vote, a unanimous recommendation of the plan that was developed that the next day went to the regional council and received unanimous support. I don't take that lightly, but it speaks volumes to how important this region is in coming together. Our mayors felt strongly about coming together and delivered that unanimous vote of support, expressing just how important continued transportations are for this investment or for our future. So with that, I'll conclude and certainly appreciate the audience today. Thank you so much.
That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Audra. And good morning, everybody. My name is Elaine Cruz. I'm a government relations representative with Solid River Project and also chair the policy committee at the Chandler Chamber. And it's a pleasure to be here with this great crowd. Our next speaker is from Maricopa County District 1 Supervisors, Jack Sellers. Jack Sellers has served on the Board of Supervisors representing District 1 since February 2019. In November 2020, voters elected him to serve a 4-year term on the board. Mr. Sellers previously served 2 terms on the Chandler City Council and continues to serve as the chairman of the Arizona State Transportation Board. He also has a position on the GPEX International Leadership Council, to the Arizona-Mexico Commission, and Arizona Sister Cities. With that, Jack, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I think about something that Audra said for a minute. Maricopa County has 62% of the population of the state, and we are the only county that has to get legislative approval to be able to refer something to the ballot. Ridiculous. Anyway, we are working on that. So, this morning, since none of our current candidates are talking about infrastructure as a priority, I decided to run for governor.
Go, Jack.
Then I thought maybe April 1st isn't a good day to make that decision. I need to figure out how to do this. Oops, wrong direction. There we go. Okay. Okay, so now I'll talk with you about why I'm here today and my involvement at Maricopa County infrastructure plan. You know, historically, county supervisors really haven't been deeply involved in infrastructure issues. They served on MAG committees, mainly representing county issues in unincorporated areas in the county. But my background and priorities helped me decide that the county, with its region-wide interest in our quality of life, was really the right place for me to be now. My passion is a strong quality of life and strong economic development. And that's what makes us such an attractive place for companies and people to want to move and grow here. A key part of that quality of life is our infrastructure. And certainly in today's world, we know that infrastructure is more than just roads. To efficiently move people and commerce, we absolutely need to start with a superior road system. But a metropolitan area our size absolutely has to have a multimodal system that includes viable transit options. Of course, critical infrastructure includes water and broadband. We continue to be the fastest growing county in the United States because we had leadership 20 years ago that had a plan that's given us better infrastructure than any other metropolitan area our size today. Hope what I'm saying matches some of the slides. I live in Chandler and my heart is in Chandler. One of the things that
Let me help you. Because you do this well, I can do this well.
okay. So I live in Chandler and my heart is in Chandler, but one of the things that 6 years on the State Transportation Board emphasized for me is that people don't pay that much attention to where municipal, county, or even state boundary lines are. They just want to get to their destination smoothly or have products and services available on time. So the key is ensuring that we have a system that connects and works. Next slide. We now have a federal infrastructure bill that can help us achieve a lot of our essential infrastructure priorities. It includes dollars for roads, bridges, transit, water, and broadband. And I'm working closely with our key federal officials to ensure we get everything we can to help us manage our growth. But this makes passing extension for Prop 400 as soon as possible even more critical. We need to have committed long-term funds for a system for us to have a plan that can get us our share of the federal infrastructure package. Next slide. And even though we have a lot to do to keep up with our growth, we've really accomplished a lot. Recently, on a local level, I worked with Intel to have the county design a new Old Price Road. This to help support Intel's $20 billion investment right here in Chandler. The county constructed the mile of road that's on our right of way. And of course, there were lots of issues, but we were able to complete the project without any serious complaints. The completion of the South Mountain Freeway, our most expensive project ever, and the work currently being done on Broadway Curve, our most complicated project ever, both critical for our East Valley economy. Next slide. Gateway Airport is going to be a significant part of our region's growth. I've worked closely with all the concerned parties, including Pinal County, to help plan for and resolve traffic issues in this area. Things like State Route 24 and working with Union Pacific on a project called the Pirate Project is meant to improve rail service to that area. Audra's talked about most of the major highway projects in our region, but I want to emphasize how important things like I-10 and I-17 having their improvements completed how important that is for supporting the jobs and commerce in this area. And certainly I-11 is a critical part of our economic future, so we need to be planning for that as well. You know, it's truly an exciting time to be involved in infrastructure. Autonomous vehicles and intelligent systems are changing things rapidly, and part of our plan is to be flexible enough going forward to take advantage of technology everywhere practical. Now, we're making a lot of progress. We've got a lot of work to do. That's essential to support our growth. Most of what we talk about today are capital improvements. We need to continue having serious discussions about finding ways for users to pay to maintain these systems going forward. But that's a topic for another day. So thank you all for letting me talk to you about my favorite topic, and we will now get on with people who really know what they're talking about.
Thank you so much for the update. It's great to have you in the conversation. Our next speaker, the next speaker I would like to introduce is Amy Ritz. Amy is a project manager for the Arizona Department of Transportation Interstate 10 Broadway Curb Improvement Project. Amy has more than 15 years of project development and project management experience with ADOT. She's a member of the ADOT Mayor Projects Group, which delivers complex initiatives statewide. She's currently the project manager of the $776 million Interstate 10 Broadway Curb Improvement Project. Previously served as deputy project manager on the $2 billion Loop 202 South Mountain Freeway project. Big projects. Amy graduated from California Lutheran University with a degree in political science. She began her ADOT career in 2006 in the Utility and Railroad Engineering Group. She transferred to project management in 2011 and joined the Mayor Projects Group in 2014. Please join me in welcoming Amy Ritz.
Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm excited to share an update on the Broadway Curve project along I-10. Before I jump in, I just want to explain a little bit about the project team. I realized this morning I talk a lot about the project team, but don't actually have a slide that talks about it. So we do have a small ADOT group working on the project. We're supported by a consultant that's an extension of staff. But then we also have the team that we've contracted with to design and build the project. That is made up of police, FNF, and Flatiron with T.Y. Lin as their lead designer. And when I refer to that group, I'll most likely say developer. That's how we refer to them. If you see their trucks out and about, their forward-facing name is the Broadway Curve Constructors. You drive through the area, I'm sure you can see their trucks on the side of the road, getting lots of work done. So this is a look at what the Broadway Curve looked like when it opened in 1968. This project is the state's largest urban freeway reconstruction project. And we are improving 11 miles of I-10 between State Route 202, the Santan South Mountain Freeway, and I-17 near the airport. When in areas when I refer to the directly in the Broadway curve, that's from the area about from Baseline to 40th Street. So that Broadway curve area actually sees about 300,000 vehicles on an average workday today. We are, as my understanding, we are just about back to pre-COVID numbers. So there are a lot of vehicles out there. I can attest to that as I drive through it on a very regular basis. By the year 2040, we do expect that number to increase by about 25% to take us to about 375 vehicles a day. So the project is needed now, and so hopefully we'll see some relief now and into the future for everyone who drives through this area. not just local, but I know that this is a key commerce corridor. So we see a lot of state and internet national traffic through as well. So we've heard a lot about the Prop 400 extension today. This project was included in the Prop 400 that was passed in 2004 by voters. And just wanted to point out that we are delivering on a promise made back in 2004. So a high-level look at the improvements that we are building. We are widening I-10 from about US 60 to 24th Street up near the airport to include 6 general purpose lanes and also 2 HOV lanes. The 2 HOV lanes will help with the multimodal traffic, encourage transit and carpooling as well. South of US 60, we are widening to include 1 additional general purpose lane, also widening that to 4 lanes. We are also adding a set of collector distributor roads from about Baseline Road to 40th Street, and I'll go into more detail on what those are in the coming slides. We are rebuilding the interchange between I-10 and SR 143 to create more direct connect ramps between the 2 freeways. We will have direct connect HOV lanes from 143 south to I-10 east, and then I-10 west to SR 143 north. We're also removing the current loop ramp that goes from 143 south to I-10 east that currently gets backed up today, and replacing it with a flyover ramp. So there'll be also be some improvements on US 60 to tie into the improvements that we're making on I-10. We have 2 brand new pedestrian bridges, one at the Alameda alignment near Tempe Diablo Stadium, and then the other one will just be south of US 60 to connect the Western Canal on both sides of the freeway. We'll also be widening the Guadalupe Road Bridge to allow for pedestrians, bicyclists, and equestrian utilizing the Sun Circle Trail. Trying to make sure I hit everything. We are also replacing the Broadway Road Bridge and the 48th Street bridges over I-10 as well. So as I mentioned, this is a collector distributor road system, how it's generally depicted. You have the main line on the top and the CD road on the bottom. As the name suggests, the cars are collected out of the main line and distributed into the CD road system, where they can make lane changes and enter and exit the freeway outside of the mainline traffic. The idea here is to really try to reduce the weaving that's currently happening today. So like I had mentioned on a previous slide, this will be between about Baseline and 40th Street. So where we have the 3 freeways kind of converging together, the I-10, US 60, and 143. This will allow a lot of the traffic that's moving on and off the freeway, trying to get to Broadway or 143, to be able to do so off the main lines. The mainline traffic can continue to move smoothly through the corridor. And then to go into a little bit more detail on the CD road system, the CD road system will begin in eastbound at 48th Street and will have an additional entrance at Broadway Road. This direction will extend south past US 60. There'll be an exit onto US 60, and then past US 60, traffic will be able to merge with mainline I-10 or exit onto Baseline Road. The westbound CD road begins at about Baseline Road and goes to 40th Street. There'll be exits at US 60, Broadway Road, and 143, with another entrance to it from US 60. So an example of how this will operate, the one that I'm really excited about, is if you're coming from the Chandler-Ahwatukee area going to the airport, you would exit the freeway at about Baseline Road, travel in the CD road system, past the US 60 directly onto SR 143, so that it really takes away the weaving and the multiple lane changes that are required today to make that movement. And then there'll also be the opportunity to utilize the HOV lane directly onto 143 as well. What I do want to point out, we, this is kind of a new thing for Arizona, so we will be developing educational campaign before this opens to traffic. So this is a look at our anticipated schedule. We've been out there working already. For those of you who drive the corridor, hopefully you've seen the work that's going on. We've been busy relocating utilities, constructing bridges, and then widening I-10 south of Baseline Road was on one of our first to-dos. As we move into later into the year, the phase 2 work will begin as well. And then into the third phase of the project, you'll see the completion of the city roads and the new flyover ramp connections between I-10 and 143, and then followed by the completion of the project with lighting installation, signing, landscaping, and final pavement. Still on schedule to be completed by the end of 2024. So with all of this work, there's obviously going to be a lot of impacts. And we understand that, and we know that. We know that we're going to be impacting everybody who lives and drives through this area. And we are allowing and need to have up to 50 freeway closures in the heart of the Broadway curve area, so the area between Baseline and 40th Street. But we will also have other freeway closures along I-10, US 60, and 143, as well as ramp closures. We do have scheduled those closures and restrictions for weekends and overnight. The weekend closure, as an example, would begin at 10 p.m. on Friday and be back open to traffic by 4 a.m. on Monday to really try not to impact the daily commuters. And the developer team does have a requirement in their contract to reach out to businesses and communicate with them when closures or restrictions might affect their access to their businesses. So speaking of closures and impacts, we do have a rather large one coming up this month. We are planning to close I-10 the weekend of April 22nd. There'll be a lot of information coming out about that, so hopefully you'll see it all on social media. We'll have a news release, make sure that we really want to make sure that we are letting the public know and the drivers to avoid this area. We want to make sure and get that word out. Hopefully you guys have all seen the mass communications that we have out, billboards, etc., trying to communicate as much as possible so that everyone knows what we're doing and what the restrictions are. Both of these closures are required for SRP to do some critical relocations in the area that are necessary for the project. And the one in April for sure will be both directions of I-10 closed, which is a very unusual thing for us to do, but for safety reasons, it's a high power transmission line. It's just an absolutely necessary thing that we need to do. The May one is still up in the air. We're trying to come up with different opportunities to maybe not close both bounds of I-10 for the entire weekend. So current construction, like I think I mentioned, we are working on a lot of utility relocations on 48th Street and other areas of the project. We have some median improvements to move light poles and increase the median barrier height to try to reduce the glare of oncoming traffic lights. We're doing a ton of bridge work out there. If you drive through the area, you will see Broadway Road bridge being built, 48th Street bridges, but we also are installing the elevated pedestrian bridge and doing widening at Guadalupe. We also have some sound walls going in just south of Guadalupe that I noticed on my drive yesterday. And the paving south of Baseline Road, I want to mention that we did push that ahead in the schedule so that can be opened as quickly as possible to try to relieve some of the traffic headed south on I-10. So that is anticipated to be open by the end of the calendar year. New this week, we launched a public service announcement, really pushing for drivers to be safe in the work zone, to drive the speed limit and pay attention to what they're doing. It is part of an overall work zone safety campaign that we launched back in February that includes billboards and overhead signs really trying to get messages out to get people to slow down in the work zone. All of that information, including the PSA that was released, is on our website, I10BroadwayCurve.com. There's also a lot of other information on this website if you want to check it out. We do have project updates on there, latest restrictions. And then we also have a special section with resources for businesses that includes flyers and other information that can be shared with employees and customers as well. We do also have a free mobile app called The Curve that I encourage everyone to download for real-time traffic information. So this is our contact information. If you want to reach out, we do have a phone number, an email address, and we do have a community office as well that is open 8 to 5 to the public during regular state business hours.
Thank you, Amy. That's wonderful information for everybody who has to transit through that area, right? How many of you go through there? Better download the app soon, right? All right. Our next speakers are from the City of Chandler. Mayor Kevin Hartke and City Manager Wright. So I'll start by introducing Mayor Hartke. He began his term in January 2019. He previously served 9 years on the City Council, first as an interim council member, and then was elected to consecutive 4-year terms. Kevin also served as vice mayor twice. Kevin is involved extensively in the state and region, serving on boards and committees of the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, Maricopa Association of Governments, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, the Regional Public Transportation Authority. He's an ex officio Chandler Chamber of Commerce board member, along with serving as a public policy committee member. Kevin and his wife, Lynn, have been married for 37 years and have lived in Chandler since 1985. He continues to serve as a pastor in Trinity Christian Fellowship in Chandler. He has a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and a master's degree in theology. The City Manager Joshua Wright was appointed Chandler's acting city manager in March of 2021 to oversee the day-to-day operations of the city. He joined Chandler in 2017 as assistant city manager to provide administrative oversight of city departments and divisions. But he previously served as town manager of Wickenburg, Arizona for 5 years and worked 5 years at the town of Marana, Arizona as an assistant to the town manager and director of strategic initiatives. Joshua is a past president of the Arizona City County Management Association and received its Associates Award for Excellence in Leadership in 2010. He also was named Economic Developer of the Year by the Arizona Association for Economic Development in 2011 and currently serves on the board of directors of the East Valley Jewish Community Center. He holds a master's degree in public administration, and a bachelor's degree in psychology and religious studies from the University of Arizona. Join me in welcoming Mayor Hartke and Joshua Wright.
Thank you, Helen. It's good to see you all, and this is a great conversation. When we had Jack Sellers and Rick Human on the council, those two were our transportation folks and did a lot of great work for us. And at this point, I've kind of moved into both public transportation as well as looking at our regional things, and it's a really important issue for us. As you're gathering, transportation is quite a collective operation between the county, between what we do with MAG and the state, and we try to be seamless. We all are looking at what's best for our constituents. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how these things impact Chandler. There's going to certainly be some overlap, particularly between Audra and myself. So most of Chandler's transportation funding comes from regional and federal sources, with Prop 400 making up the biggest portion of the non-city funding. We just passed a bond, which will impact a lot of our road construction, and many of our projects also come out of our general fund. So although we do not have a transportation tax per se, we pick up the lion's share and really equal what a lot of our other cities do out of our general fund and out of our bonding as well. And since Prop 2006, the 1.5 cent sales tax approved through Prop 400 has done a lot of projects and services in and around our community. And Prop 400 funds a variety of different modes and freeway construction, getting the majority, but we had a lot of our arterial streets and transit also receive significant funding. Chandler has benefited in all of these areas, as we're going to see. So I think here we go. Slide 4. Our Prop 400 was preceded by Prop 300. I moved here in '85, which was the onset of that particular proposition. And in there, we saw a lot of the freeways around the valleys being constructed in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And as the region transitioned into Prop 400, there was a need to continue to make capital improvements and development in our freeways. But we also needed to improve transit as part of our area became more urban. I have a claim to fame with the light rail, as I was on the initial ride, and my youngest son that day was right after Christmas, and had too many donuts. And my son was the first one to throw up on Valley Metro. So I don't know how much of a claim to fame that is, but I still remind him of that particular fact. He tries to ignore that, but what do dads do, right? As we're moving into the continuation of Prop 400, capital needs across our community remain. The Great Recession forced deferrals of many important projects beyond the life of our Prop 400. So these and other projects, along with maintaining an investment in transit, are needed to continue making transportation improvements that will continue to attempt to limit congestion and offer a lot of transportation choices. So, as I mentioned, Prop 300 enabled the region to build important new freeways, including Loop 101 and 202, and the extension of 60. And Prop 400 is going to allow for the widening of many of these freeways in condition, as well as new lines such as Supervisor Sellers mentioned, the 202 South Mountain and Loop 303 on the West Valley. And additionally, Prop 400 funded the first light rail and extensions into Mesa, as well as the streetcars into Tempe. Our Prop 400 had major impact on arterial streets as well in the Southeast Valley, as well as other parts of our county. And about 10% of Prop 400 funding went towards arterial streets, but the region was also able to leverage federal funds to extend the reach of this particular program. So in addition to funding light rail construction, Prop 400 funded a great deal of bus and paratransit service in the region as well. And although our bus system covers not completely all of Chandler, we were able to continue to get paratransit that reaches well into the south part of our city and help others who need those particular services as well. The area that received funding for light rail construction in Mesa and Tempe and Phoenix had to come up with their own, had to fund their own bus services. And this was an attempt to bring equity throughout the benefits of Prop 400. So we've always looked at what does the West Valley receive, what does Central, what does the East Valley, and how do all those tie together to make this truly a regional transportation. The Southeast Valley heavily benefited from Prop 400 funds. As again, South 400 or South Mountain segment of Loop 202, State 24 again, as Supervisor Sellers mentioned, as well as lanes were added on the Loop 101, the Loop 202, Santan, I-10, and the US 60. The Southeast Valley has been able to utilize approximately $900 million to build 99 different projects to enhance arterial streets, with 30 of those projects in Chandler. One of the our staff has been really, really good. I don't hear it so much in the current administration, but previous federal administrations always use the word shovel-ready projects. And we've had a great transportation staff that really has queued us up so that when money was available and there were timelines on these particular projects, Chandler was in the loop to at least be competitive with other cities. And we did a good job of getting a lot of projects because of that. I really want to kudos to our current and previous transportation staff. They've done an excellent job in serving our community. So on slide 9, this map summarizes the Prop 400 funded projects. And again, Audra covered some of those across its various modes. All corners of our cities have benefited from Prop 400 funding, with the North and West Chandler getting the majority of Chandler's bus services, while arterial funding in the Southeast Chandler, allowing the city to bring all of the streets up to modern standards and accommodate the traffic demands in the growing parts of our city. And additionally, intersection widening projects in North Chandler have brought increased capacity and safety in some of the older sections in Chandler as well. So Meg already talked about the Prop 400 extension overall and the regional transportation plan that the region has been working on for the past 2.5 years. But I do want to highlight one map, even though that Audra shared some of this, that showed some of the investments planned in the extension, along with a summary of investments planned within Chandler as well. As was the case for Prop 400, the regional balance has been very important for the Proposition 400 extension. And planned investments for the extension will be spread throughout the city as well as throughout the valley, assuring that those who pay into the tax will also experience some level of benefit. This has been really important to me, as well as many other mayors, to making sure that as our cities, as our taxpayers have and will continue if this passes, which we're all working together to make sure it does, is that there's value spanned across the entire county. And in our community, we will see several arterial streets and freeway projects that have been included. And additionally, Chandler will continue to benefit from the regional transit funding as well. So I'm going to be winding down my comments. Over the last 25 years, Prop 400 will result in a direct investment in Chandler of about $1.42 billion. These are projects or services that have occurred within Chandler's boundaries, as well as those that have benefited Chandler and our neighboring community as well. Chandler residents also benefited from projects outside of our community, such as the freeway improvements between Chandler and downtown Phoenix. And that was to the tune of $271 million, resulting in an overall $1.7 billion benefit to our city. As MAG, in our MAG region, as MAG continues to work on over this for the past 2 years, the MAG Regional Council approved this coming last December. And currently, our legislatures are considering the authorization of the sales tax extension that will go on the ballot, and ultimately the extension will need to be approved by our voters, which is what we are targeting on this November. There's a lot of other projects that across the state that we do work together. With ADOT, we've got the extension or the widening, for example, plans in the future between here and Casa Grande. As was mentioned, the Broadway curve. We're grateful for ADOT and our legislators, for example, when we had a water main break underneath the 202-101 intersection, that we're able to work that together. So when all things work well, we all realize we're on the same team, and you and the rest of our constituents across the valley are those who benefit. So thank you, and let me turn this over to City Manager Josh Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about transportation, as our speakers have indicated before me. And I think to kind of bring it back home here as we wrap up, transportation is directly tied to the economic development success that Chandler has experienced in the last several decades. You can see just from your daily commutes and how you got here even today, how well served Chandler has been by multiple types of transportation networks over a long period of time. And that was due to some visionary planning work that was done at the regional, but also at the city council level going back many, many years. That work continues today. In fact, in getting ready for the Prop 400 extension discussions, Chandler took an early lead by updating our transportation master plan back in 2019. And that's a key document for us that not only reflects community values and looks at where we need to make improvements as our community continues to grow out and look at other economic development opportunities, but also serves as our roadmap as we were going through those regional discussions about where we needed to be and how to develop that jurisdictional equity that the mayor was referring to earlier. I wanted to show you some of the survey results that we got. Just one slide coming out of that transportation master plan exercise we did several years ago. We did an extensive public involvement, which is always part of our planning process. It's always interesting to see where people's priorities are when it comes to transportation. So when you ask people, how do you get around today? Of course, they usually say by personal vehicle. Arizona as a whole, certainly Maricopa County, the Valley, and Chandler, we are an automobile-driven state by and large, and so you see that in the question about how do you get to where you're going today. But what's also interesting is where do you think we need to be in the future? And we see that a lot of people are interested in other modes of transportation, and so we have to divide this delicate balance up of investing not only in what people are doing now and making sure we have appropriate transportation networks for the today, but also this is a long-term regional plan. So how do we invest in where people think they will be in the future? And so you see that here in other types of modes of transit, transportation like transit, and also what we call bike and ped or multimodal transportation. And of course, people anticipating even some new technology that we may not know about today. So things like autonomous vehicles, how that may affect public transit system. Chandler has long been a leader in that area. As you know, we have several companies engaged in that work here in Chandler today. So we don't know yet some of what we don't know. And so part of the goal of the regional transportation plan and also Chandler's transportation plan is giving some flexibility to what is not yet known that may become the primary or significant mode of transportation somewhere in the future as this plan evolves. So I'm going to speak about our transportation systems and how they affect you here today in Chandler in 3 different areas that come directly out of our transportation master plan. So our roadways, our street transportation network, as well as our transit elements, things like our bus system, and then also what I refer to as multimodal or bike and pedestrian systems later on at the end of the presentation. So one of the things we do in a transportation master planning exercise is assess where we are today. How are we doing? What is the capacity of our existing road system? And again, due to many years of visionary planning, we did this assessment back in 2018 for the 2019 master plan. Chandler is in really, really good shape. We have long planned ahead for major expansions and growth or economic development activities in our community. And you can see the levels of service on our major arterial network are very, very strong today. Green represents a high level of service, or good level of capacity. That doesn't mean that all day long you're not going to get through every single cycle in one red light. I know that's often the judgment test that gets used by the layperson is how many cycles is helping get through the intersection. But on the whole, looking at a full day's worth of activity and measuring that traffic pattern, how are we doing at getting people to where they're going across our city? And I'm proud to say that Chandler, again, has long been a leader in providing a well-balanced transportation system with a lot of capacity. You see there's a couple areas of concern, which is not unusual, areas that were not as busy back when they were expanded last as they are now. And there's been changes in the land use patterns around that area. And so we need to go back and reevaluate those, shown in yellow. And then a couple spots where you can see there's a more immediate need. And Chandler is already working on those as the most critical part of our transportation infrastructure on arterial streets. That's not to say that if we don't continue to invest in things, we're going to see that forever. So you don't want to kind of sit back and say, we're good, let's be done, let's finish things out, and we don't need anything more. When you're in a good place, that's the best time to think about investing continually in the future. And that's certainly what the plan is, not only at the regional level, but also at the local level. So we also forecasted, and again, this is just a projection based on traffic demand and land use patterns and the overall growth in the community. What if we didn't do anything else? What if we just sort of stopped and said, we're good, we don't need any other investment in transportation. Chandler is at 93 or so % build out in terms of our land uses. Maybe that's it, but you're going to see that those levels of service rapidly decline in key areas of the community by the time we get to 2040, which is the end of our study horizon for the transportation master plan. So again, this feeds into our requests at the regional level and also our budgeting and our local capital improvement plan to figure out how we make sure that doesn't become the scenario you see for future residents of this city. So then that leads to what's recommended, what is in our horizon, again, and what was requested at the regional level. The City of Chandler City Council has done a really good job of planning, as I mentioned before, long ahead for what were anticipated to be major arterial street traffic improvements and finishing out that as a major policy and financial goal of the city. So I remember when I came to the city 5 years ago, right away being told one of our major goals in our plan is to finish out that southeast road network of the major arterial streets in Chandler. And you're going to see in these upcoming slides here, we're actually getting very close to accomplishing that original goal. So just like the city of Chandler grew, if you look at our growth patterns over the last, say, 40 plus years, we look mainly at post 1980 because that's when Chandler really started to boom in population after Intel and other major investments were made here in the private sector. You can see this, the city kind of started at the downtown core, went north in terms of where the building went west, and then went south and southeast. And so that's the way the transportation improvements have evolved as well. So you're beginning to see that in terms of how it's unfolding for the next round of transportation investments. We're now finishing out that last part of the southeast. The last few major arterial streets are on the horizon or already under construction. And then you're seeing we're going back into places like North Chandler, Uptown Chandler, and then back out to West Chandler as well to reinvest back in areas that have since really blossomed, and now we can figure out what the ultimate improvements are going to be in those areas. There's also some other highway improvements that are tied to that. Chandler, again, is very well served on multiple highways, and so continue to invest in those expansions is critical in our 40 or 20-year horizon up to 2040. So some projects that we've recently accomplished, kind of supporting everything I just told you, and Supervisor Sellers mentioned a counterpart project in the county on this first one here. So working with our partners at Intel, also with the Arizona Department of Revenue, so some special funds, and also Intel's local investment in this, we're able to reconstruct a portion of Old Price Road as capacity improvements for Intel's expansion and future growth in that area. That was both in the county and the city. Gilbert Road, and a lot of this was also tied to growth by the school district that was advanced up because of the high school's growth over at Gilbert and Ocotillo with their new high school campus, Ocotillo to Chandler Heights. The first phase of Alma School, this was also accelerated by growth because of Banner Hospital's investment over the 202 in Alma School. That was moved up for that first phase from Pecos to Germain. And then under construction now, we're nearing the final phase, I'll say, of Cooper Road between Alamosa and Riggs, and also continuing our alley paving programs throughout the city. Coming in the next few years, and some of these are already underway, Ocotillo Road, the last section, kind of the furthest eastern edge of our city before you get into Gilbert, over at Gilbert Road to 148th Street is being widened. Chandler Heights Road, council just voted on this construction contract at their last council meeting between McQueen and Gilbert Road. We did Arizona to McQueen several years ago, so that's finishing out as you head to the east. Ultimately, that will go all the way to Val Vista Road, which is the edge of the city. There's some traffic signal improvements at some key intersections where they need a new traffic signal added. One is at Warner, Nevada, will be the first that you see. And also due to employment growth around the area where the COSD bus barn is, if you're familiar with that, down Ocotillo Road. There's a punch through that has to occur on Appleby Road and Hamilton Street to link up that entire transportation network for that area. Other on the immediate horizon, Lindsay Road is actually the last you will see of those major arterials, and then again, more phases of Chandler Heights Road. One project on here I wanted to highlight is the Cooper Insight intersection. This was actually a major recommendation, not only from the transportation side, but also from the airport side, where Cooper Road dead ends today in Queen Creek. seeing that curve around over to link up with Gilbert Road to facilitate economic growth in that area. And then you can see all these projects laid out on a map here as well. Just really quickly touching on bike and ped, Chandler has a very robust bicycle network, but we are working on expanding that as well. We have presently over 220 miles of bike lanes, but seeing a desire to see those move off of arterial streets in some areas and become dedicated facilities where you're not riding with traffic is a major trend that we're seeing going into the future. And then also working on some shared mobility. You see things like scooters. Even I took a ride on one. You can see down there to try it out, making sure it was working properly. So looking at non-traditional or new technology when it comes to transportation and transit. You're going to see more of that occurring as we connect up and link up major arteries in the city through this map in the future. And that's another part of our investment strategy as we build out those major roads. What are the other means of transportation to get people around the city? There's another couple of items related to that with bike lane projects we've recently completed, many of which are in West Chandler at this point. I want to get to a slide here before I wrap up. About transit here. Chandler does have a very robust transit network, primarily in North Chandler, and it is very expensive to operate fixed route bus transit. So some of the innovative things we've done working with the private sector are partnerships with groups like Lyft. We've been able to actually give a discount for people to get to bus stops in South Chandler rather than running bus directly to their neighborhood. And we offer a steep discount for that. So it helps them get to an existing transit network rather than build a net new transit network at a much lower cost. And then one item that is going to be coming to council this month that I want to make sure I hit on as I wrap up here is a grant funded program. So we were able to get a $2 million grant from a group called A for Arizona. This is going to provide a startup capacity for us to work not only in an economic development transit program, flex transit program, so you can actually have a more of an on-demand service, but it also works with students in this area. So we'll have an opportunity for high school students in this zone that you see to be able to get to after school activities or other employment opportunities in this area. And so that will be our newest, I'll call it transit innovation, that is a much more on-demand, real-time, app-driven type service that we're going to be piloting here in the coming years, hopefully launching this summer. So look for those colorful vans or something very similar to that in the not too distant future. So with that, I will wrap up my comments. And again, thank you so much for having me here today to talk about transportation in Chandler.
Josh, thank you so much. Very insightful information here. All right, so we're gonna get into Q&A right now. I'm gonna do these. Well, I just left my.
I'll start it off, and I
Okay.
don't know which one wants to. So when you're looking at a regional plan, traffic plan, and so forth, can you talk a little bit about collaboration with like some of the Indian communities that are surrounding us, as well as, and Audra, I don't know if you want to handle that, and then jump to, because we have two major projects that are happening on each side of us, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you need the mic for? So yeah, so we, as part of the Maricopa Association of Governments, our member agencies include Native Nations, and albeit sovereign in nature, they still have a seat at our table, and we're pleased that we're able to coordinate with them. Indeed, the I-10 project in particular is probably top of mind for this audience, recognizing that stretch of I-10 through the Gila River Indian communities, the last segment to be widened, connecting Phoenix and Arizona. It's ADOT's top priority project. It was in the governor's State of the State address. There's a bill committing, I believe, $400 million working through the legislature that would pair with funding that MAG has set aside for that project. We recognize how important it is. I think one of the reasons that project has continued to move forward so successfully is because of the really positive relationships that we have developed with the Gila River Indian community, specifically at MAG, and together with the Arizona Department of Transportation to really advance that project that is in fact unique for a lot of reasons. notably because it does traverse through a sovereign nation, and there are some distinct challenges associated with the expansion of that facility that I think I can't say enough about the strength of that relationship today and how it will be because of that relationship that project is delivered here in the upcoming years. So
Is it still on target? I think they will be heading out an entrance and exit ramp between Wild Horse Path Boulevard and Queen Creek Road. Is that still the plan to have that in that area? Then I don't know if we want to address it. Oh, sorry.
I do know we've been, particularly the Casa Grande and Chandler and the Gilas, we've met several times. And some of their concerns is, they don't want people coming off the freeway and just traveling through the res. And that's been a concern in the past that has delayed this particular thing or this particular project. But it's good seeing all people on board. And I think all of us who drive to Tucson all the time, you do see that bottleneck. It's probably one of the most dangerous passages of freeway across our city, across our state. So this is a welcome project. And I think as this unfolds, there's going to be the bridge widening or the Gila River Bridge is going to be replaced. I think ramps, and I'm looking to know, okay. My understanding is the bridge is going to be replaced. There's going to be ramps. And then certainly the widening of this. I don't have a timeline on this now, but we appreciate the governor's and the state's attention to this and prioritizing this, and certainly hoping for federal infrastructure dollars to come across this path as well.
The White House made a statement regarding a very lofty goal of 30% to 50%, actually realistically 30%, but shooting for 50% of vehicles on the road by 2030 as electric vehicles. Could you talk about the implementation of the alternative fuel corridors in this plan, as well as the recharging infrastructure?
Amy, do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to handle it? All yours. Great partners. ADOT is really active on this right now, in part because there is indeed set aside funding out of IIJA, the federal infrastructure bill that has just been passed out of Congress that talks specifically about electric vehicle infrastructure, talk to climate change, and indeed include additional programs in carbon reduction. One that's probably the highlight, and we certainly have seen the most interest on it, is in fact the electric vehicle infrastructure, and specifically that intended contiguous network across the country, ensuring that there is a charging station at least every 50 miles. The first federal funding coming out for that program includes a mandate that each state department of transportation have a plan to ensure that can be done. That plan needs to be done this fall. That's a really quick turn for government to respond to. ADOT is all over it. We'll be helping them along that way. The intent clearly in that situation is to build the infrastructure in the rural components of the country, in this state as well. That's of course where the infrastructure doesn't currently exist. That first year of funding that is available for electric vehicle infrastructure that will be coming through the Arizona Department of Transportation, it's $11 million. So to manage expectations, that's not a tremendous amount of funding, but it will be one step forward in a pipeline that has been established of funding to contribute to that as part of IIJA. Aside from ADOT's work, as is required through that federal resource, there are several funding opportunities that are coming now to a more local and regional level. We're actually activating now to start a readiness plan effort so that this region, because of this brand new plan that we have just adopted, stands ready to access that funding as quickly as possible. In this region, the electrification of the fleet is good news for a lot of reasons. In part, it helps to contribute to our air quality containment. We are in an air quality non-conforming area, and so that allows us to achieve some of our air quality goals as well. It will be a few years for the infrastructure to come online. It's also an opportunity to partner with the private sector who does this much faster than government can ever do that. So I think the mix and match of both public and private funding will be able to help get us onto that goal. That has a lofty goal indeed that has been set by the administration. So anyone, you guys want to talk a little bit more at the local level?
I do know in Chandler that it's harder to put charging stations where you've got existing houses and existing businesses. The cost of new versus refill is astronomically, and council in particular, Councilmember Stewart has really been kind of the junkyard dog in talking to apartments and new developments to making sure that we're putting in charging stations wherever we're doing new stuff. It's, in a sense, we're playing catch up to the technology here, but it is coming, and we will continue to emphasize that in anything new, as well as we'll see whether there is additional programs that we can further add to enhance that in the future. But at this point, I think like other cities that are predominantly built out, is we are doing a lot of catch up with this.
Mayor, any other questions?
So piggybacking on the electric cars, GM, Toyota have all announced that they will not make a gas-powered car after 2035. One of the numbers you had up there was gas tax revenue as part of this 20-year projection. And it's concerning that we went through 2008 when the recession hit, we had to cut back on funding. Have you guys anticipated that number, and have you conservatively planned it so it's not a pie in the sky number that won't happen?
We absolutely have. In fact, I would argue we spent a considerable amount of energy on our projections, our revenue projections. Specifically, one of those lessons learned coming out of Proposition 400. We wanted to make sure our cost estimates were as close as we possibly could get them, and wanted to be very deliberate and conscientious about the revenue projections. Harder on the federal side, because it's hard to guess what a political administration year over year, let alone over 30 years, is going to deliver. With highway user revenue fund, not to get on the soapbox, because as Supervisor Sellers has already indicated, that's a whole nother seminar series that we'll be launching in a couple of weeks. But indeed, those are pretty conservative estimates, recognizing the transition of fleet to electrification, even just higher fuel efficiency. Adjusted for inflation, the amount of funding Highway User Revenue Fund generated in 2000 was more than it generated in 2019. And at the same time, we've added 60% population in the state of Arizona. Bottom line, we're using our roadways more and more every day, contributing less to their operations and maintenance. My panelists can go into a deep dive on the details associated with that. It is an important funding source for local communities, though, and it's one of the reasons why you saw that big $90 billion about transportation needs in the region. PERF isn't going far enough for cities and counties, let alone for the region or state, and that's one of the reasons there's so much pressure on the region to deliver important transportation infrastructure investments. The revenue is just not there. So we're hoping that that is a needed change. We need to modernize how we fund transportation infrastructure. ADOT does not have any funding to expand the system in the state outside of what they generate through our programs at the Maricopa Association of Governments and our partners down in Tucson. There is no available funding to expand the system statewide, and we're continuing to be the state everyone wants to move to. So there's going to need to be a modernization of that funding.
Good morning. There's also a large casino project on the south end of Chandler. And I was just wondering if you had any information from a state or regional level in terms of, also it's in phase 1. I know there's phase 2 and several other phases expected. Do you have any information about maybe the anticipated traffic patterns in and out of that project right now?
we've asked the HELAs to do a traffic study, and they have done that. And they're currently anticipating that about 60% of the traffic is coming from Gilbert, our highway to the east, Val Vista, with another 20% coming from highway to the west, coming off of Arizona Avenue, for example, and about another 20% of their traffic coming from South Gilbert, which will connect with the Santan and I think what is that, the 387. So they've done their own traffic study. We are currently working with residents, getting the information out. We did a 3 HOA tour, I think 2 weeks ago. Myself and several council members participated in that to answer questions. They're going to be putting a light at the intersection of Gilbert. They're going to be, the Gila River Tribe and the casino group that is doing this together. They're going to be doing road improvements from Gilbert Road South, as well as some flood mitigation currently planned on Hunt Highway. There's some future asks that would come into Chandler. At this point, what they're currently planned is really the intersection and flood control. They have desires to do some widening and improvements on Hunt Highway. Hunt Highway is actually a Chandler Street from Val Vista to McQueen. So that's actually city's jurisdiction, and we're working with them in the future to see what their traffic demands will require. If there are any improvements along that, it'll be on their dollar and not on ours.
I did have a question about some of the environmental impacts of the at-risk dollars. Are there any at-risk dollars on the federal level, that federal funding that was up there as a result of the P10 or P5, that we are mandated to do at the federal level?
Great question, and thank you for asking it. As I mentioned, we are in a non-attainment area for air quality. If we are not able to prove we are in containment and that we are able to continue to meet the air quality goals that come out of the Clean Air Act, which we have and have great trajectory for, we can risk losing those dollars. The good news is we've done a really good job of forthright planning. One of those programs you saw listed in the investment plan includes air quality investments that allows us to ensure that we remain on target, remain air quality conformant, which we have and have trajectory for out to the past year 2050. The feds approved our regional transportation plan in the middle of December, indeed confirming an air quality conformant conclusion associated with that plan. So as long as we continue to invest in that multimodal network, that's why transit is so important as a component of it. It's why some of the air quality mitigation strategies to ensure that we can, as best we can in the desert, mitigate deaths and the movement of deaths and partner with folks around this region to ensure that we can meet those targets. We will continue to see that federal funding flow to the region.
Talking about air quality, has it, and it probably has been discussed in your committees, for slower intersections within the cities, having red lights flashing as opposed to being stopped at a red light in slower traffic times in the middle of the night or whatever. You might be sitting at a light for 3 minutes and no cars are going by. Has that been considered?
So I'll partner on this answer with the City of Chandler, but one of the reasons we do have a program, that Intelligent Transportation System, or ITS for short program, and that set aside funding, is that helps to fund, in partnering with local agencies like the City of Chandler, signal timing projects and other innovative technologies, especially now as we see that technology rapidly increase in sophistication, to be able to manage our systems and tell us when and where people are so we can be more responsive to it. That ITS investment is specifically for those kinds of projects, partnering not only with cities like the City of Chandler, but also from a freeway perspective.
those big VMS boards that you see if there's an accident coming up, or the wrong way detection, wrong way driver detection system. Those are all funded through MAG commitments as part of the asset sales tax dedicated here to Maricopa County. Those are the kinds of technologies we see only expanding into the future. And one of the reasons why that portfolio funding expanded as part of this investment plan.
Yeah, great question. And Audra's exactly right. Actually, two projects I would highlight in Chandler that speak directly to not only our partnership with MAG, but also to the technologies evolution and things like what you've described. So we actually are currently a pilot with MAG on a project that has what we call V2I components, so vehicle to infrastructure. So this is the cool space age stuff that we're talking about now, where it's like the car will talk to the intersection and back and forth for the cars that are set up for that. It's still a pilot, so we're still learning a lot and getting data out of that, but we're actually doing that in some of our busiest areas in Chandler and seeing if we can time those signals better based on volume. We have a traffic management center at the city where we're constantly monitoring these things anyway, but now you're talking about doing it with AI. So you're beyond what even computations of a human hand can do. Now a computer can do it to do it even faster, make it that much more efficient. The other one that I would highlight that I think also speaks to, sitting in that red light is, what if you're not in a car? What if you're a pedestrian? Obviously at the button, but if you're on a bike, there's no way for it to know that you're there waiting. But in Chandler, we actually have been rolling out for several years now thermal imaging cameras. So rather than it be, we used to have like a thing in the street that it would detect if there was a vehicle sitting on it, then it was like a little laser radar thing that would detect you. Now it's down to thermal imaging is what we have, where it can actually see if there's a person standing there on a bike, and it alerts the signal to change because the heat sensing will detect that there's a person there. So we've been doing that in phases, rolling that out across the city to enhance our traffic flow, not just for vehicles, but for all modes of transportation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. I think we're up.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Eli. That's better than we have it completely on. Sorry about that. I just want to thank, let's give all of our speakers a big round of applause. These updates are really, really critical, and thank you. And I know, Audra, you come back every year to give us this, so I really appreciate that. A couple other things. We've got a couple of elected officials in the room. We have council member Mark Stewart here in the back, as well as council member Odie Harris as well. Did you want to add anything else real quick?
Well, thanks for everything that's been done today. The melding of all of these groups together, together amazing. It's been incredible what we've done at Chandler. But real quick, about 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Ellis, Councilmember Lopez, we went to Washington, D.C., and we lobbied directly to Kirsten Sinema, Kelly, Greg Stanton, and Amy Biggs for infrastructure support for the infrastructure bill. And we were very, very focused on Intel and the CHIPS Act, making sure that funding happens, and the infrastructure development around Intel is recuperated because it will be supported by our local tax dollars and some more max support and things like that. But we would love to get some federal support since this CHIPS Act moving forward for our local community. There are a couple of other things we worked on to make sure that we remain tax exempt on some of our bond initiatives and things like that. But we're to let you know what we've been doing as your council from a federal level to lobby. So that's the big thing.
And I do want to mention, as a Chandler Chamber, we have been in contact with every single one of those as well. In fact, we've had them recently in our office, making sure that we're also advocating for them. I know I work very closely with Ryan, Cities Intergov here and Alexa, on any issues, making sure that we're protecting Chandler. Councilmember Harris, anything while we wrap up?
Yeah, just
Quick.
we also advocated on healthy water from the Colorado River as well. And then we also advocated for transportation and transit. So those are the things that we did to work and represent each one of you. Thank you.
Water is really important, so thank you for that. All right, just a couple of things. Next Friday at Chandler Community College, in front of you there is a flyer. We have a criminal justice symposium We have got the absolutely top-notch list of speakers, topics. It will run from 9 till noon. Lots of topics, lots of great information. So it is a free event to attend. So make sure that you just go onto our website and register. But we've got lots of great content coming for you there. Couple of other things, women in leadership. We will have a representative from our own Bashes, now Rayleigh's, and how that hometown grocery is going to still maintain our home as our hometown grocer, but also talk about some of the exciting things that are about to come with that as well. And then our Education Workforce Coalition at the end of April, we are going to be discussing artificial intelligence, AI effects on all business sectors. So great information there. And next month's public policy will be on cybersecurity. So wait till you see that panel that we have coming to speak. Obviously, all of us are affected by that. So lots of great information that we're bringing to you. I also want to do another shout out to Air Products and Chemicals, Salt River Project, Planet Startup, Dignity Health, Chandler Regional Medical Center, Intel, Catalyst Computer Technologies, Southwest Gas, Edward Jones, Terri McKibbin, APS, and of course, Dragon Walk Chinese Restaurant. So thank you, sponsors, because these events would not be possible without you. So please have a great day. And if you want more questions, anybody who attended today will get this PowerPoint that was presented today. We will email that out to you after. Thanks again for joining us and your support of the Chandler Chamber.